Hello friends, welcome back. Last lecture we discussed about a brief overview based on the types of group therapies. Now we will move on to the details of these therapy groups. The first is cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. It aims to reduce symptoms of various mental health conditions, primarily depression and anxiety, which leads to distorted thinking patterns and responses. And minute to minute the person changes their responses, they become haywired, their attitudes, beliefs and values also become distorted. Sometimes they have a particular value and sometimes they have a different value in another situation, and these problems are associated to an individual's emotional problems. Suppose they have experienced major emotional loss, or it can be any untoward experience that has a major negative impact on their behavioral pattern. So, the aim of CBT is to improve emotional regulation and develop personal coping strategies that target solving current problems. Basically, it is based on completely regulating and managing one's own emotions. So, CBT focus on altering or changing the automatic negative thoughts that can contribute to and worsen an individual's emotional difficulties, depression and anxiety. These spontaneous negative thoughts also have a detrimental influence on an individual's mood. That is so obvious that when there is some emotional irregularities, then it also affects the mood patterns of an individual, because there is distortion, there is no sync in the emotions, sentiments and behavioral disposition. Through CBT, faulty thoughts are identified, challenged and replaced with more objective and realistic thought patterns. But yes, to mention, CBT is something that involves a rigorous process of curing psychological problems. It is not an one day issue, it is actually a process when a person has to undergo this process at a very rigorous manner. Now, when we are talking about CBTs, then there are different kind of therapies involved in it. The first is dialectical behavior therapy, multimodal therapy and rational emotive behavior therapy. So, if we talked about DBT or dialectical behavior therapy, this therapy addresses the destructive patterns of behavior, which is completely based on emotional irregularities that occur within an individual, and how this therapy based on dialogues help an individual to develop ways to cope with stress, regulate emotions and improve the relationship with others. And the only way to improve relationship with others is to communicate and interact. So, it is a dialectical behavior therapy. The other is multimodal therapy. Now, this therapy works on 7 aspects. The first is behavior, affect, sensation, imagery, cognition, interpersonal factors and drug or biological considerations. That means that this often offers assessment tasks that enhance the diagnosis, promote a focused range of effective interventions and improve treatment outcomes. It also talks not only about behaviors, emotional irregularities, but it also talks about functioning of the brain. It also talks about the medication or psychiatric treatment that a person is undergoing and what changes can be brought based on this therapy. So, it is a consolidation or consideration of human behavior based on 7 factors, that is behavior, affect, sensation, imagery, cognition, interpersonal factors and drug or biological considerations. And the other is rational emotive behavior therapy. It involves identifying irrational beliefs, actively challenging these beliefs and finally learning to recognize and change these thought patterns in a healthier, more realistic way. So, the goal of REBT is to help people recognize and alter those beliefs and negative thinking patterns in order to overcome psychological problems and mental distress. That means, an event has occurred, right? How the person interpret that particular event based on his distorted pattern only, and how the person responds to that situation. Now, that response can be irrational, it can be illogical, because of previous experiences the person is dominated by negative thought pattern and response and interpretation both becomes negative. So, the aspect is that if the event has occurred, right, and how the cognitive behavior has been used to interpret the situation, or cognitive process has taken place to understand the situation, and how the person has reacted or responded to that particular situation. So, that is the aim of rational emotive behavior therapy, that rationality has to be there. If rationality is missing, then that irrationality has to be cured. So, this is the aim of REBT. So, these are the forms of cognitive behavior therapies which are being used as per the required situation. So, CBT can be used to treat wide range of psychological problems such as addiction, anger, anxiety, bipolar disorder, depression, eating disorder, panic attacks, personality disorders and phobias. It is also used to help people cope up with chronic pain or serious illness, divorce or breakups as it leads to emotional problems, grief or loss, insomnia, low self-esteem, relationship problems and stress management. Now, these are the factors which I have just now discussed are related to our day-to-day life. So, how these therapies help an individual at group level as well to cope up with these kind of issues. The next is benefits of cognitive behavioral therapy. So, the underlying concept behind CBT is that thoughts and feelings play a fundamental role in behavior. It is not about how we are interpreting the situation. Basically, what kind of thoughts and feelings we have, if they are rational, the interpretation of the whole situation is very much rational. If the thought pattern is distorted, then the interpretation of the whole situation can get disturbed. So, the CBT, the aim of CBT is something very wide that can help people in number of ways, such as it helps develop healthier thought pattern by becoming aware of the negative and often unrealistic thoughts that dampen feelings and moods. Because once a person undergoes this therapy, the therapist helps a person to identify that what are the distorted patterns they are thinking about and how they can realign those thought patterns. It is effective for a wide variety of maladaptive behaviors, which we have already discussed in the previous slide. It is often more affordable than some other types of therapy, because some therapy, for example, multimodal therapy requires lot of money and time, because it requires a treatment process, a medical treatment and psychological treatment process, and it consumes lot of time, money and energy. So, CBT is something particularly that it is affordable for any person. The other is that it is effective whether therapy occurs online or face to face. It can be used for those who do not require psychotropic medication. That means, if the therapy is, that means that this kind of CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, can be used to for those people also who do not require psychotropic medication. It means drug consumption or prescription of the drugs which influences the functioning of the brain and behavior. So, this is something where the person can easily approach the therapist without any psychotropic medication or drug consumption. And one of the greatest benefit of cognitive behavioral therapy is that it helps client develop coping skills and can be useful both now and in the future. That means, the person can sustain for so long when the person is undergoing such kind of therapy. The next is interpersonal group therapy. It is an approach to the treatment of psychological, behavioral and emotional problems that emphasizes the curative influence, which we have already used this term earlier, of exploring the interactions of group members, including the analysis of group events, experiences and relationships. That means, when we are interacting with the other person, the person is able to recognize the cognitive forces in his mind, find out solution, because the person becomes aware of the other person's experiences and determine his own behavior in a very healthful manner. So, this is the advantage of interpersonal group therapy. So, IGT or intergroup therapy focus on the present, noticing signs of people to recreate that past in what is going on between and among members of the group. It monitor how group members relate to one another, how each member is functioning psychologically or emotionally and how the group is functioning. That means, based on observation also, people tend to understand that this is the right way to follow a particular pattern of behavior so that we can resolve the problem. Sometimes we fail to understand that how to communicate. Problem is there in our mind, we do not know, we do not understand how to communicate. While experiencing or observing and sharing our experiences with others, we tend to find that solution to a problem while observing the other members of the group. So, this is the advantage of interpersonal group therapy. So, the main goal of interpersonal group therapy is to improve the quality of clients' interpersonal relationship and social functioning to help reduce their distress. It also aims to change relationship patterns rather than the associated depressive symptoms, as well as target relationship difficulties that exacerbate these symptoms. And most importantly, it requires a high degree of understanding about and insight into group dynamics and individual behavior. So, the idea is that the more we are interacting, the more we are curing our emotional problems, our psychological problems. The more we interact, the more we observe other people and find out different ways to overcome our distress. Now, next is that how interpersonal group therapy provides strategies to resolve problems with 4 keys. That means, it also functions on certain principles. The first is it addresses interpersonal deficits or relational deficits or social isolation. That means, whenever the person is experiencing some relationship problems with his or her spouse or other family members or colleagues or co-workers, then it identifies that interpersonal deficit or relational conflict or deficits. The second is that it helps patients manage unresolved grief. Sometimes there is onset of distress. Sometimes it happens, and it is part of life also, that if we have disturbed relationship with one member in the group, maybe we will find that our relationship has been disturbed with the other member of the group as well. So, there is onset of distress, mental distress. So, IGT helps to identify those kind of unresolved griefs and distress and how it can be resolved based on curative influences of exploration and interaction. For example, it helps patients manage unresolved grief if the onset of distress is linked to the death of a loved one, either recent or past. The third is that this therapy can help with difficult life transitions like retirement, divorce or moving to another city. As we discussed early, that divorce is there, then emotional problems are there, retirement is there is emptiness syndrome, and if the person is moving to another city, then actually food, language, cultural shocks can be a problem which can create lot of anxiety, and how that problem can be resolved based on IGT. And the last is that interpersonal group therapy is recommended for dealing with interpersonal disputes that emerge from conflicting expectations between partners, family members, close friends and co-workers. For example, if the co-worker is unable to reach or bring his performance at par, then also there is a reason that interpersonal conflict can occur between two co-workers. Or when we are expecting too much from the other person and the person is not coming up to our expectation, then also it leads to interpersonal conflict. So, interpersonal group therapy actually functions on these 4 key principles. The first is to address interpersonal deficits, to resolve unresolved grief, to help with difficult life transitions or situations, and fourth is to deal with interpersonal disputes. The other is psychoeducational groups. Psychoeducational groups are a form of group therapy that focus on providing education through information sharing and the development of healthy coping mechanism. That means, the person's family members are also involved in this type of group therapy, where family members are being aware of that person, that what a person is going through, what are the potential triggers and how those potential triggers can be inhibited in an individual's life based on different kind of communications and interactions. So, when we talk about psychoeducational groups, they are informative sessions that bring family and patient together to learn about substance abuse. For example, a young boy who is trapped in substance abuse, maybe the family does not know that what company he or she is keeping. So, in that phase, these psychoeducational groups involve family members and they make them aware that what are the potential triggers in terms of the company the girl or the boy is keeping, that is forcing him to get into this kind of abuse. So, in this kind of information sharing groups, family members learn about different kind of potential triggers and how it can be resolved. These are the structured group sessions. That means, particularly a session is being arranged for a member along with group members, where learning is also there, some activities are there, and how to bring about change in the lifestyle of that person. So, this is a structured group session for exercising this therapy. Psychoeducational groups are designed to focus specifically on the patient's life. The key aspect of these group sessions is that they do not work to change the situation, but rather inform everyone about what is happening, why it is happening, and what they can do it. Definitely, these type of sessions talk about the potential triggers that a problem can aggravate and find out solution where problem can be reduced. So, psychoeducational groups reduce stress and fear while simultaneously improving motivation and feelings of self-worth. This form of therapy provides an excellent opportunity to network with others who understand one another's experiences and can provide support throughout the recovery process. Any youngster who is undergoing this process of psychoeducation group session, then the person also tries to understand that the person who is recovering must also have gone through the same kind of problem, and how he is making efforts to overcome the same problem. So, this gives lot of encouragement to a person to take up that lifestyle changing patterns, and the person becomes more encouraging and gets more confidence to enhance or resolve his problem. So, clients can learn from one another, help each other manage difficult situations, and motivate each other when times feel especially hard. So, that means while observing the other members in the session, the person can identify different ways to cope up even a single problem. So, the goal of psychoeducational groups is to transfer information from those mental health professionals' attendants to the patient and family. This is the foremost important feature of this kind of group therapy. They provide medication and treatment plan support and education. They offer training specially aimed at self-help and self-care for those in need. That means, the individual attention is given in every session, that what kind of help and care can be given so that the person can overcome his problems. It creates a place for family to share emotional frustrations, concerns without any negative impact. Sometimes the person cannot express that why he engaged in substance abuse, but during the sessions the person can come up, open up with different kind of emotional catharsis, that what is the reason that I have gone into this kind of behavior. Psychoeducational groups are a powerful motivator in addiction treatment. Simply knowing you are not alone in your struggles can make a significant impact, which helps a person to overcome his failures and fear and develop confidence, and reduces stress and improve motivation and feelings of self-worth. These groups provide an excellent opportunity to network with others who understand one another's experience and can provide support throughout the recovery process. Clients can learn from one another, help each other manage difficult situations, and motivate each other even when times feel especially hard. And the last is that psychoeducational groups facilitate greater self-insight and interpersonal functioning. That means, in any particular session of psychoeducation therapy, there are interactions, people get to know about one another, and they have more chance to look within themselves that at what point they can improve. The other is skill development groups. These groups helps individuals and group members to acquire particular skills to meet one's own goal in life and recovery. These groups may provide knowledge and skills for building leadership, to manage conflict, enhance and take ownership of your actions and thought, which may be used later in an individual's career or other relationship. This is the application of this kind of group, that is skill development groups, where the person develops his competency to enhance his performance and perform more effectively in terms of learning new skills or gaining new knowledge and aptitude to perform his task more effectively. It can be about leadership situation, that how leadership skills can be developed to take up a new task or new role, and most importantly how you take up the ownership of that particular task. So, the most important element of this kind of skill development group is that it helps individuals and group members to develop different kind of new skills to enhance their performances. So, skill development groups cultivate skills people need to achieve and maintain abstinence. That means not only related to substance abuse or any other kind of negative pattern of behavior, it is also about to improve their performance. Assume clients lack needed life skills and allow clients to practice skills. That means how the person can develop new skills to practice better behavioral dispositions. Are sensitive to client struggle. Self development groups hold positive expectations for change and do not shame individuals who seem overwhelmed. In support groups, members give and receive unconditional acceptance. That means that skill development groups accept people with what they are and they help in contributing much to gain more skill. The group also encourages its members to reflect on their personal beliefs and behaviors, and when attending skills development groups, an individual receive positive reinforcement from peers and practice using skills effectively. That means when a person develop new skill, he is being rewarded, he is being reinforced for what he has developed and contributed to the other group members, such as emotional control, relaxation and communication. This group also help develop a knowledge base to help oneself when decisions need to be made and appropriate action taken. And the last, it helps develop skills such as anger management, mindfulness and relaxation techniques. Here mindfulness is a very important term that has been used in reference to skill development group, where the person has the ability to filter out the important and unimportant information and learn how to respond and not react. So, this is mindfulness, that means focusing on the present, you are very much attentive in the present moment and how you are interpreting the whole situation. So, this is mindfulness. So, self development groups talks about life skills which basically focus on leadership skills, which focus on managing conflicts based on anger management, mindfulness and relaxation techniques. And the last is support groups. A support group is a gathering of people facing common issues to share what is troubling them. That means people with common problems come together to resolve their issues at collective level. Through this sharing of experiences, they are able to offer support, encouragement and comfort to the group, to the other group members and receive the same in return. That means people with similar problems come together, they find solutions to resolve their problems and they share as reward and cost outcome. So, in both the reward cost outcome there are positive exchanges. So, this is the aim of support group. So, support groups provide a wide range of benefits for people with a variety of mental health conditions as well as their loved ones. Support groups bolster members' efforts to develop and strengthen their ability to manage thinking and emotions and to improve interpersonal skills as they recover from substance abuse. They address pragmatic concerns, that means they address only most of the time on the practical solutions to their problems. Sometimes some problems are being resolved in a very theoretical manner, right, but sometimes we need some actions which we can implement, which we can execute. So, those solutions should have that practical significance. Improve member self esteem and confidence, because when people with common problems coming together, it also gives them a relief that they are not the only person who is struggling. There are other members in this world who are struggling and how they are recovering from those problems, that gives them lot of self confidence and raises their self esteem. They provide positive reinforcement, model appropriate interactions, respect boundaries and foster open communication. Because they all the members in the group are having similar kind of problems, they understand that what can be the reason of the other person's problem and they respect the boundary, that not to intrude into the other person's life and rather help them to overcome their problems. They vary with group goals and group needs. In support group, members provide each other with various types of help. Members with the same issues come together for sharing coping strategies to feel more empowered and a sense of community, because people are suffering from the similar problems, similar kind of problems. They understand each other's problem, that is why they have more respect for each other. They do not cross their boundaries, and they are more empowered, and there is sense of community and belongingness, because they understand each other very well based on their problems, common problems. So, there is sense of community and belongingness, and they feel more empowered that if all together we can find a solution to our problems, then there is more strength to themselves. They help may take the form of providing and evaluating relevant information, relating personal experiences, listening to and accepting others' experiences, providing sympathetic understanding, and establishing social networks. Thus, it helps to inform the public or engage in advocacy. So, the more there is sharing, the more there is communication of information, the more there is solution to the problem, and most importantly, members in support groups tend to advocate each other's problem, because they understand the reasons and ways that they have got into this kind of problems. They facilitate discussion among members, they have acceptance and regard for each other, they ensure interpersonal struggles among group members do not hinder the development of the group, since they are respecting the boundary of each and every person. So, they also make it a point that when they are coming to the solution, they should not hinder the other person's development. They have a theoretical framework that supports group development, members, goals, interactions, and the specific interventions. They build connections and emphasize that what common they have among them. They foster social interaction and engage in creative activities. That means activities which help them to overcome or resolve any problem. They explore their substance abuse, that is what can be the origin, it can be trauma, it can be medical illness, it can be family issues, and how and to what extent those issues have impacted their life and how they can recover, and depend on the form of expression clients are asked to use. That means, the more there is expression, the more there is the more curing is there, and the more solution is being recovered. So, we are through with this lecture, that is group work. So, till now we have discussed that what is the applicability of group in different kind of life situations. It can be individual, it can be group, it can be organization, and it can be at personal level. So, I end up this first module with this hope that we will discuss more in detail about the group process and structures. Thank you so much.